Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere hot, sacred, and deeply impractical for modern life, straight into the heart of the Aztec Empire. You're not just visiting, you're waking up in it. Imagine it's still dark outside. The highland chill creeps through the gaps in the woven walls. You're curled on a reed mat, stiff and itchy, and all of a sudden, boom, giant drums, the kind that make your ribcage buzz. Welcome to Tenochtitlan. You're not dreaming, you're just not rested either. The air smells like copal incense, damp straw, and the distant promise of roasted insects. You blink and realize there's no pillow, no blankets, no snooze button. Just a few rough fibers scratching your cheek and a crick in your neck from sleeping at a weird diagonal because the mat dips in the middle. Someone outside yells in Nahuatl, something about the sun god and discipline. You have no idea what's going on. But apparently, neither do the turkeys next door, because they're flapping around like someone whispered, Thanksgiving. And there's a dog, a Zoloitz's Quintly, hairless, wrinkled, suspicious of your soft suburban aura. It sniffs at your foot with the judgment of a creature that knows you wouldn't last a morning here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up, which is a mistake, because your back makes a crunchy noise. It's cold. You expected this to feel more like an Indiana Jones adventure, less like an underheated camping trip. Outside your hut, made of mud, reeds, and very confident architecture, things are already bustling. The sun hasn't even cleared the horizon, but you hear children being scolded, corn being ground, and someone loudly regretting their overindulgence in pulque. You shuffle outside, still barefoot, and your first step lands directly on a small stone, an unpleasant one, and yet somehow not the worst thing you'll encounter today. The street's made of packed earth and old gravel, someone's sweeping, with a broom made of tied twigs, which works about as well as you'd expect. You're in a chinampa neighborhood, a floating plot of farmland on the edge of the Great Lake. The homes are tightly spaced, and smoke curls out of low chimneys. It smells earthy and vaguely spicy. One kid runs past you shouting a ritual greeting to the sun. You instinctively nod. The sun doesn't nod back. Rude. In this world, the sun isn't just a bright orb. It's a deity who needs daily affirmation, or, human hearts. Every morning begins with a ritual to keep it from dying. Historians still argue whether these morning offerings, flowers, feathers, even cuts on the ears, were symbolic or literal for average citizens. Either way, you're now late to pretend offer something. As you trudge toward the center of your neighborhood, a group of older men are already gathered, wearing white cotton cloaks, their faces serious. One of them's chanting a prayer. You awkwardly hover at the edge, unsure what to do with your hands. Then, a boy your age elbows you in the ribs and mutters, "Copy me." So you mumble something that sounds vaguely reverent, hope the gods aren't checking pronunciation, and try to keep up with the gestures. You bow toward the rising sun, which you can't see yet because of the low mist, and flick some flower petals onto a flat stone. No one corrects you. You consider that a win. There's a moment of stillness, and then the street bursts back into noise. A flute player stumbles past, playing a melody that seems to loop endlessly. Somewhere, a baby starts crying, and from a nearby rooftop, a hawk screams and launches itself into the sky, like it has somewhere important to be. You're ushered to the edge of the canal to wash your face. The water is, at best, indifferent to your comfort. Cold, silty, and vaguely fishy. But it does wake you up. The man next to you blows his nose directly into the water. You try not to scream. Let's be honest, you're not cut out for this. You're thinking about coffee. You're thinking about deodorant. You're thinking about shoes. But in the Aztec Empire, you get none of those things. You get purpose. A purpose that begins at sunrise, ends at exhaustion, and may involve more insects than you're ready to acknowledge. You start to wonder how many hours remain in this day. The answer is too many. Your stomach growls. Your feet hurt. Your soul regrets this immersive historical experience. And somewhere in the distance, a conch shell sounds, signaling the next communal ritual. It's not even 7 a.m. Remember, in this society, you're one small part of a grand cosmic balance. You exist to serve, to praise, and to not mess things up. And messing up can involve something as simple as forgetting which direction to face while saying the corn blessing. Also, those drums, they never stop. They pulse in the background, reminding everyone that time is sacred and lunch is a privilege, not a right. And that's just your first half hour, Your feet are now fully awake, though not in a pleasant way. The texture of the ground seems determined to exfoliate your soles with every step. It's like walking across a cobbled alley made entirely of disappointment and ancient gravel. You attempt a kind of tiptoed shuffle, but that only draws attention. One old woman passing by mutters something under her breath. You're fairly sure it wasn't nice posture. You glance at the others around you. The barefooted look is the norm here, unless you're a noble. Nobles get sandals. Some even wear soft-soled versions decorated with parrot feathers and turquoise beads, which is frankly just rude. Meanwhile, your feet are rapidly developing a topographic map of pain. And if you thought the floor was your only problem, you haven't met the fleas. They come with the reed mats. They are the reed mats, if we're being honest. And no, there's no citronella candle to save you here. You scratch discreetly, but the damage is done. A small girl stares at your twitching leg and giggles. You briefly consider asking if she knows where to buy socks. Then remember, those are mostly ceremonial, worn by priests or dancers, and sometimes eaten. Yes, you heard right. There are records suggesting certain rituals involved consuming garments or garments made of edible dough. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic communion or a very crunchy lunch. You head toward the larger plaza with your host family's son, who takes pity on you. This way, he says, as if he hasn't already watched you struggle like a tourist at a yoga retreat. You pass homes decorated with obsidian blades and bundles of dried herbs, and arrive at a neighborhood checkpoint, a kind of gate manned by elderly men whose job is to quietly judge foot traffic. You nod and try to look like you belong. One of them raises an eyebrow at your blotchy ankles. You are, to put it lightly, not blending in. The path opens onto a broader street, a causeway stretching toward the center of Tenochtitlan, the capital, the real heart of the empire. And it is busy. People everywhere, flower vendors, feather artisans, soldiers with jaguar pelts slung over one shoulder, children herding ducks in little reed baskets. And somehow, amid all of this, a man casually walking past with a monkey on his shoulder. The monkey is eating a chili pepper, with judgmental eye contact. You step aside to avoid being trampled by a porter carrying an enormous basket on his back. He mutters something about you blocking the way, but it's hard to hear over the flute players and the rhythmic slap of women grinding maize with matetes nearby. The sound is soothing, stone against stone, a daily music of survival. Then it happens. You stub your toe, not just a little tap. This is a cosmic-level toe collision with a sun-baked stone that's older than your family tree. You stifle a yelp and hop in place, which only makes it worse. Because now, 3 nearby children laugh. A parrot screeches in approval, and a priest in black paint gives you a slow once-over as if to say, "You are not long for this world, outsider." You limp past a set of stalls, trying to save face. There's a vendor selling amaranth cakes shaped like gods. Another has an entire stand dedicated to obsidian mirrors. One gleams at you, polished to perfection. Your reflection looks both confused and betrayed. Your companion leads you up a flight of stairs toward the temple district. The stone steps are uneven, steep, and completely unforgiving. At the top, you pause to catch your breath. Your lungs are politely asking for modern air conditioning. Instead, you get more incense. Lots more. Up here, the plaza buzzes with purpose. Priests move in deliberate, eerie silence. Scribes are hunched over bark paper codices, drawing symbols that look suspiciously like disapproving birds. A small crowd is gathered around a storyteller, who's dramatically reenacting a divine battle between gods using hand gestures and deeply committed eyebrow work. But you can't focus, because your feet feel like they've walked across an emotional desert, and you're starting to notice something strange. Everyone else is fine. They're calm. Their feet glide like they're in a sandal commercial. You, on the other hand, are one more rock away from declaring mutiny against history itself. Then, someone taps your shoulder. It's a young acolyte, his face smeared with chalk. "You stepped on the wrong stone," he says solemnly. You blink. What? He points at a carved pavement tile shaped like a jaguar paw. "That's sacred." "Great. You've offended something again. Maybe a god. Maybe the street. Possibly both." He gestures for you to follow. You hobble after him into a shaded portico where a low chanting hum fills the air. Inside, rows of candles flicker against murals depicting cosmic battles, celestial serpents, and at least one very disapproving maize god. You're brought to a shallow basin where you're encouraged to rinse your feet. The water stings a little, probably the salt or the guilt. The priest overseeing the ritual nods slowly and waves a fan made of eagle feathers. "The ground forgives," he says cryptically. Then he adds, "But you should walk more carefully." Lesson learned. The Aztecs respected the ground. It was sacred, alive, connected to the gods. Every stone had meaning. Every step was a potential prayer, or a minor catastrophe. You shuffle out of the portico feeling, if not holy, at least slightly less cursed. The sun has risen now. The plaza is fully awake. And as the day stretches before you, like an overcooked piece of maize dough, you realize you've only just begun this very, very long day, and your feet are already plotting rebellion. You know what you're craving right now? A nice breakfast. Something warm, cozy, ideally involving caffeine. Maybe a croissant. Maybe a waffle. Just something edible and emotionally supportive. But here, in the Aztec Empire, your breakfast is different. You sit cross-legged beside your host family in the shade of a courtyard, and they pass you a bowl of something beige. It smells vaguely like wet cornflakes and existential surrender. It's a tole, a maize gruel that's somewhere between soup and regret. No sugar, no cinnamon, no charming vanilla swirl. Just warm, greyish sustenance meant to prepare your stomach for the day's labour. You take a tentative sip and try to smile politely. It tastes ancient, like history and disappointment. But, hey, at least it's warm. The family next to you munches on leftover tamales. Not the good kind, though. These ones are filled with beans and wrapped so tightly that opening them feels like unwrapping guilt. No salt, no spice, and absolutely no coffee. In fact, coffee isn't a thing here yet. That delightful bean won't make its grand central American entrance for a while. What you do have is cacao, but that's a luxury item, not a breakfast staple. Nobles and warriors drink it as a bitter, foamy, spicy beverage, often mixed with chili and sometimes blood. You get the maize soup. You glance longingly at a passing merchant who's balancing a tray of insect cakes. Crickets, ants, even. Larvae, rolled in ground seeds and roasted into crunchy protein nuggets. They're actually considered a delicacy, and your host father eyes them with deep desire. You, however, eye them with a polite nope. The children snort and chew noisily. One of them has a grasshopper leg stuck to his lip, and nobody tells him. This is just breakfast here. Quick, protein-rich, and designed to make you question your choices. And if you thought this was the calm part of the morning, surprise. Because breakfast isn't just for eating. It's for listening. As the family chews, the matron speaks. She recounts a tale of Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, and his battle against the moon. She gestures dramatically with a ladle. The children nod solemnly. You, meanwhile, try not to choke on a clump of half-dissolved gruel. The story's not just for fun. It's moral education. Every meal comes with mythology. The gods are in your food, your chores, your dreams. And they are very, very invested in your moral character. Historians still argue whether these domestic storytelling sessions were strictly religious instruction or just a culturally intense version of table talk. Either way, there's no small talk here, only celestial drama. As the family finishes eating, everyone thanks the maize, actually thanks it. Out loud, with a little bow. You too bow to the maize, because you don't want to risk spiritual indigestion. Breakfast concludes with a rinse of the mouth using cold canal water. It's brisk, slightly murky, and no, there is no toothbrush. People here clean their teeth with chewed twigs or crushed charcoal. You'll try that later. Maybe. Someone hands you a tortilla with a smear of pumpkin seed paste, just in case you're still hungry. You accept it like it's a lifeline. It is, in fact, a lifeline. It tastes better than the gruel, nutty, dry, and a bit gritty, but oddly comforting. Suddenly, a conch shell blows in the distance, a long, rising note that signals the city's central market is now open. Everyone around you perks up. You think, finally, shopping. But remember, this is not a mall. This is the Tlatelolco market, the largest in the Aztec world. Tens of thousands of people visit it daily. It's less of a quick errand, more of a spiritual marathon with commerce. Before you can blink, you're being ushered toward it. You want to sit, maybe nap, but the matron hands you a small pouch of goods, salt, dried fish, and a handful of dyed cotton thread. Trade these, she says firmly. You barely get a word out before you're swept into the foot traffic. The road toward the market is lined with causeways and flanked by waterways. Canoes pass silently, loaded with flowers and bundles of maize. A boy waves at you, chewing on something green and ominous. Probably a leaf that makes dreams feel like flying or drowning. Depends on the dosage. At the market entrance, there's no gate, but the shift in energy is palpable. Colors bloom, voices rise. Everything smells like roasted squash, wet herbs, and incense. Merchants shout their wares. Obsidian knives, chili bundles, live ducks, amulets made of jade, rabbits in cages made of reeds. And somewhere in the chaos, you spot what might be a tamale stand, guarded by a woman with the gaze of a hawk. You clutch your trade pouch and look around helplessly. This market doesn't use money in the modern sense. It's all barter. You have to negotiate, smile, compliment the merchandise, know the social dance. And you, unfortunately, are about as graceful as a dropped gourd. You point to a dried fruit bundle and offer your fish. The seller laughs, then points you toward a novice trader's corner where beginners swap less aggressively. You trudge in that direction, thoroughly humbled. Behind you, someone is selling frogs, not as pets. You make one successful trade for a small woven comb and immediately lose it in the crowd. Welcome to breakfast in the Aztec Empire, now fortified with humility, protein, and mild social panic. You might be thinking, at least I'm done with breakfast. But no, because in the Aztec Empire, there's no such thing as a relaxing post-meal stretch. There's only responsibility, duty, and the knowledge that your socks, if you had any, would be wet, full of dust, and possibly cursed by whatever god oversees clumsy foreigners. You're led from the market down a series of packed dirt paths that weave through the neighborhood. Each household has its own layout, but there's a rhythm to the architecture. Rectangular adobe homes, wide-open courtyards, low doorways, and the ever-present smell of nixtamalized maize and slightly damp straw. You admire a brightly painted wall with images of hummingbirds and jaguars locked in stylized combat. It looks almost modern in its execution, until you notice one of the hummingbirds has actual jade for eyes. Subtle flex. You're ushered toward the central square of your Kalpurli, the local community unit. Think, a very serious HOA with gods and an intense recycling program. And you're expected to participate, but you're still barefoot, and your feet feel like overcooked tortillas. The day's first duty, cleaning, not your room, not your face, not your browsing history. No, cleaning the entire communal plaza. alongside several children, with brooms made of dried agave stalks. You're handed one of these prehistoric sweepers and directed toward the temple steps, where pilgrims have been shedding flower petals and sticky tamales for hours. You begin to sweep, hoping to coast under the radar, but an elder catches sight of your slack elbows and issues a correction. Bend deeper. The gods notice sloppiness. So now you're sweeping for divine approval. Excellent. The sun rises higher, and the air becomes a thick stew of incense smoke, humidity, and that one persistent smell of fermented beans that won't leave you alone. Sweat begins to pool behind your knees. A dog lounges in the shade, watching you with the bored disdain of one who has already achieved enlightenment. Nearby, a young girl empties an urn of ash onto the plaza floor, then sweeps it into a perfect spiral. It's art. It's sacred, and it's expected. She's 6. You're struggling to lift dust off the ground. You mutter something about OSHA violations, which no one understands, but which pleases you momentarily. Once the square is clean, or clean enough that you no longer feel like a disappointment to 8 different deities, you're guided to a smaller chamber nearby. Inside are rows of young people, seated cross-legged, backs straight, eyes focused. This is Karmakak, school for the noble-born. Or, if you're from the working class, you'd be sent to Telpoch Kali, which is less scrolls and more here's. How to throw a spear and shout. Today, because you're a special guest, they let you observe a Karmakak lesson. At first, you think, nice. Air conditioning, aka a shaded room, and people are sitting down. But then the priest instructor steps forward. His face is painted black, his hair is bound with reeds, and he's carrying what looks like a fan. It's not a fan. It's a whip made of stingray spines. Motivation. He begins to speak in rhythmic, poetic Nahuatl, his voice rising and falling like a chant. The lesson is about moral conduct, discipline, respecting one's elders. You're expected to memorize large chunks of this, now. There's a palpable tension in the room. No one dares whisper. Even the flies seem hesitant. You glance sideways, at a boy beside you. He's around your age, with a smooth expression and perfect posture. He mouths a warning. Do not slouch. You immediately straighten your back, like it's a matter of survival. Which, honestly, it kind of is. Then, the class is asked to recite, together, in rhythm. You try to fake it. You fail. Your timing is off. Your vowels are wrong. And the instructor's eyebrows lift like a pair of ominous obsidian blades. He walks over to you. The silence becomes deafening. You are asked a question. You have no idea what it means. You respond with a panicked smile and a noise that might have been, I'm trying. Everyone stares. The instructor tilts his head, then, mercifully, turns away. You exhale so hard you briefly see stars. The class continues. A discussion unfolds about the sacredness of maize, the metaphor of the hummingbird's journey, and how one should act in the presence of a noble. The answers are poetic, philosophical, often bird-themed. You're struggling to focus, not because it's boring, but because the heat has turned the air into a damp tortilla you're stuck inside. The room smells like old paper, wet clay, and slightly charred cactus sap. The stone walls amplify the priest's voice into something both holy and vaguely threatening. At one point, someone sneezes. The class collectively whispers a protective chant. You whisper something that might have been bless you, but in this context could have meant may your corn curdle. The student next to you shoots you a look. When class finally ends, you're told to bow to the east and exit without speaking. You do. As you step into the sunlight, you realize you've just attended what might be the most intense humanities seminar of your life. Outside, your guide returns and pats your shoulder. You did okay, he says. He only stared at you for 2 full breaths. Comforting. You're informed that next is physical training. You assume this means stretching or light jogging. You are, as always, wrong. You follow your guide, limping slightly, still processing the psychological bruises from your surprise guest lecture. Maybe now you'll just rest a little, sit on a nice woven mat, sip some tamarind water. But no, the Aztec Empire does not believe in gentle transitions, because the next stop on your itinerary is essentially gym class, if gym class were designed by warrior poets with a flair for ritual combat. You've been brought to the training courtyard of a Tenochtitlan, the military and civic training school for commoner boys. Even from a distance, you can tell this place means business. Obsidian-tipped spears glint in the sun. Boys your age are hurling javelins with casual menace, and a man built like an angry statue is yelling instructions while pacing like he owns the planet. Line up, someone tells you, shoving a practice spear into your hands. You hold it like it might explode. The instructor, painted in warrior blue with red bands on his forearms, gives you one look and sighs. Loudly, the spear is heavy. Not heavy like my groceries are awkward, but heavy like I'm holding a sharpened tree. You glance around, trying to imitate the posture of the boy next to you, who stands with ease and confidence, as if he was born already flexing. The instructor shouts a phrase. Everyone hurls. You flinch and duck. Your spear drops uselessly at your feet. It bounces once. A duck waddling nearby startles and waddles away faster. You are not blending in. The instructor walks over, picks up your spear, hands it back and mutters, "At least pretend to be a jaguar." You try again. This time, you manage to get the spear to leave your hands. It travels about 3 feet before thudding into the dirt like a disappointed broom. The boy next to you snorts. You whisper, "How long do these sessions last?" And he shrugs. "Until lunch, unless someone throws up. Then we take a short break." The next task is even worse. You're handed a round shield and a dummy club, called a maquahuitl, a flat wooden weapon embedded with obsidian shards. You are expected to spar. The instructor pairs you with a boy half your size, who immediately knocks the club from your hands, disarms your shield, and kicks your shin. You thank him. There is no water break. Instead, they move on to something called discipline drills, which involve carrying small clay statues back and forth across the courtyard, while shouting oaths of loyalty to Huitzilopochtli. You ask what happens if someone drops a statue. The answer is, they make a new one, then carry that. Somewhere during the 4th lap, your arms go numb. You look to the instructor, who's now just sitting cross-legged and casually chewing on cactus fruit, watching you like a jaguar watching a confused squirrel. You want to sit down. You want to lie down. You want to become one with the dirt and never get back up. But then a bell sounds, sharp and clear. Everyone freezes, even you. The instructor stands. "On a test," he says. There's a pause. The boys glance at each other. A few smirk. One sighs dramatically. You, meanwhile, are very confused. You are all led toward a series of painted wooden boards. On each board is a drawing of a mythological creature. Serpents, jaguars, skeletal gods, frogs with too many eyes. You are told to recite the name, its lineage, and the moral lesson associated with it. You're first. This is unfair. The instructor points at a frog. Your brain screams, "That's a frog." You say, "That's a frog." He nods slowly. "And?" You add, "A wise frog?" Silence. He leans in. "And what does the frog teach us?" You panic. "Hydration?" He blinks, then waves you along. You think you've passed. Somehow. Historians still argue whether this honor test was primarily educational or psychological warfare. Either way, you're deeply unprepared. Finally, you're released. Sort of. You're told to walk around the courtyard in silence and reflect on your spiritual readiness to serve the gods. You mostly reflect on how your calves feel like corn mush and your hands smell like fear. The boy who kicked your shin earlier walks beside you. "Not bad," he says. You nod, winded. You didn't vomit. You nod again. A victory. You might be okay. You're not sure if that's encouragement or pity. but you'll take it. Then someone shouts, "Snake!" There's a brief, chaotic stampede as half the class runs toward it and the other half runs away. You stand frozen, unsure which group to join. It turns out the snake is small, harmless, a grass snake actually. It's quickly scooped up by a passing priest and taken to the temple gardens, probably for symbolic reasons, or maybe it's just their version of pest control. Either way, it's a good metaphor for your morning. Sudden panic, brief chaos, and an outcome that leaves you slightly more confused than before. The training session ends when the sun reaches its highest point. You're allowed to splash water on your face from a large communal basin. It's warm, slightly gritty, and the closest thing you've had to a spa treatment today. As you stumble back toward your host family's home, you're informed that it's time for your birthday analysis. You blink. What? Yes, your guide says. Your Tonali. You must know your fate, of course. Because what day in the Aztec Empire would be complete without a divine personality test? Your legs are trembling. Your shoulders ache. Your lungs are somewhere behind you, possibly still in the courtyard. You're sweaty, dusty, mildly humiliated. And now, according to your guide, you're due for a cosmological evaluation. Because, in the Aztec world, who you are, your character, your destiny, your daily struggles with public sparring, isn't really up to you. It's written in the stars, or more precisely, in the sacred calendar of your birth. You're led into a shaded structure on the edge of the plaza, where a priest waits inside a circular room. The walls are covered in murals, coiled serpents, jaguar lords, radiant suns with far too many eyes. The air smells like burning copal and something sweet, possibly fermented agave or just the priest's incense-scented laundry. You're invited to sit cross-legged on a mat woven with maguey fibre. The priest doesn't speak at first. He just stares. You stare back, trying not to look guilty for something you probably haven't done yet. Then he asks, "What day were you born?" You start to answer, then remember the Gregorian calendar doesn't translate neatly. Your guide steps in and, with a few quick calculations and a whisper to the priest, translates your birth date into the Aztec system. It turns out you were born on Tenochtitlan, one dog. The priest nods solemnly. That's not reassuring. He rolls out a codex made of amatl bark paper. It's painted with bright mineral pigments, each square filled with gods, beasts, and highly expressive humans wearing suspiciously little clothing. He finds the one dog glyph, an abstract canine with bared teeth and extra flourishes, and gestures toward it. This is your Tonali, your spirit energy, born with the sun's position. It guides your strength, your struggle, and your end. You try to look wise and not deeply freaked out. Dog people, he continues, are loyal, driven, and prone to emotional overthinking. He glances up. You cry easily? You open your mouth to object. Then remember that moment earlier with the frog question and your near emotional collapse. You nod. Yes, the priest says. Very dog, he continues. Your fate is mixed. Your day is ruled by Xolotl, the god of fire, lightning, and the underworld. He pauses for effect. Also, the protector of souls during their journey through Mictlan, so you're emotionally volatile, spiritually haunted, and your guardian deity is a skeletal dogman who leads people through death. Excellent. What a horoscope. Your guide leans over and whispers, "Could be worse. Could have been one crocodile. Those people never sit still." The priest begins to trace lines in ash across the mat in front of you, mapping out your Tonalpohualli, the sacred 260-day calendar. It's not just your birthday that matters here, but the entire cosmic alignment of that day within a grand cycle of destiny. Historians still argue whether these readings were rigidly enforced or served more like gentle life coaching with jaguars and thunder. For you, however, the priest is quite firm. You must be cautious, he says. You are blessed with endurance, but you attract difficult gods. Watch for signs in dreams. Be wary of owls. You blink. Owls. Yes, he nods. Ominous creatures. If one hoots near your house, it may mean death or indigestion. You nod slowly. You will henceforth regard owls with extreme suspicion. The priest finishes the reading by placing a small stone in your hand. It's carved with a spiral and warm. From the sun. This is your Tenochtitlan, a dreaming token, he explains. Sleep with it. It will bring clarity. You resist the urge to ask if clarity involves fewer javelins and more modern plumbing. Back outside, the sun has begun to dip lower in the sky. The city still hums with life, but the pace is shifting. Shadows stretch longer across the roads. Vendors shout a little louder. Ducks honk more anxiously, which may be a coincidence or may be a sign from the gods. You're still clutching the token when your guide turns to you with a smirk. So, ready for your chores? Chores? You didn't think a fate reading was your afternoon break, did you? You're escorted back toward your host's home, where a pile of firewood waits beside a grinding stone. The matron waves you over and gestures to a bowl of maize kernels. Time to learn respect for tamal, she says. You think you've eaten tamales, but until now, you've never truly met one. The process is elaborate. First, you rinse the maize. Then you grind it, by hand, on a volcanic metate that predates your own sense of purpose. The grinding is slow, rhythmic, and unexpectedly personal. The stone is heavy. Your arms tremble. You manage to produce a small smear of mesa that looks like failure and grit. You try again. This time, the matron nods. You learn. Her daughter brings over banana leaves for wrapping, along with fillings, some with beans, some with squash, one with something unidentifiable and crunchy. You do not ask questions. While you work, the older children sing a song about the maize goddess Chicomequatl. The words are simple, repetitive, and hauntingly beautiful. It's half lullaby, half hymn. You hum along, half a beat off. The sun slips lower. The shadows grow softer. You smell the tamales steaming in their clay pot. For a brief moment, your hands stop aching. The world feels steady. You've survived most of the day. You've failed a spear throw, offended a frog god, and become spiritually tied to a dog deity who dislikes owls. But you're still here, and dinner's almost ready. Dinner, you tell yourself, will be your redemption. You've endured a full-body workout disguised as education, survived a mystical personality assessment involving skeletal dogs, and developed forearms like a tortilla vendor. Surely now, the universe will reward you with something warm, filling, and not actively judging your every bite. And yet, what lands in your bowl is, once again, not what you'd hoped. Tonight's meal is a small stack of tortillas, a scoop of roasted insect paste, definitely grasshopper-based with a suspicious crunch, and a thick sauce made of pumpkin seeds, chili, and something vaguely sour. You take a cautious bite. It's earthy, smoky, and not entirely unpleasant. It tastes like a secret, a very chewy secret. The family eats in near silence, not because they're unhappy, quite the opposite. Meals are a sacred, structured affair, where food is acknowledged as a gift from the gods, and not just something you inhale between TV shows. You remember to thank the maize again. You may also thank the bug paste, just in case. The father reaches into a small pouch and pulls out something wrapped in woven cotton. He unfolds it slowly, revealing a single, beautiful slice of roasted turkey, seasoned, glazed, luxurious. It gleams in the lamplight like treasure. It's not for you. He tears off a piece and hands it to the matron. Another goes to the eldest son. You get a polite smile and another spoonful of pumpkin chili sauce. You are, in the eyes of this meal, very much a side character. In the Aztec Empire, meals are tiered. Nobles and high-status citizens get access to delicacies like turkey, avocado, cacao, and freshwater fish. You, a time-traveling tag-along with the spiritual essence of a nervous dog, get basic rations, tortillas, beans, chili, and the occasional cricket. The divide is stark, and you can't help but notice that even among commoners, the portions are strategic. Elders eat first, children last. Guests, you adapt. Historians still argue whether the hierarchy of food was strictly enforced or more flexible within households. But one thing is clear, food was not just sustenance. It was a social marker, a measure of divine favor and mortal status. You chew your tortilla thoughtfully. It tastes humbling. Conversation eventually picks up. The father speaks of a good harvest. The mother mentions a neighbor who's been whispering about rain rituals. One of the boys brags that he saw a hummingbird land on his shoulder today, which is basically the Aztec version of "I saw Beyoncé at the mall." Everyone murmurs with mild reverence. You're asked about your dreams, last night's specifically. You freeze. Your dream had involved a vending machine, a clown, and mild dental panic. You attempt to describe it in mystical terms. A large shiny box with choices, and a guardian with strange paint on his face, who demanded coin tribute. They nod slowly. The matron says, "This speaks of confusion, a journey not yet begun. Beware of mirrors." Noted. The topic shifts to omens. One neighbor claims her neighbor saw a cloud shaped like a crocodile. Another says a chili pepper burst into flames with no fire. You're not sure if you're in a dinner conversation or an early draft of a magical realism novel. The door opens and a local priest enters. Everyone bows slightly. He brings news. A ceremony is planned for the next day. A minor offering at the neighborhood shrine to honor Tlaloc, god of rain and fertility. All must attend, he says, especially those born under watery signs. All eyes turn to you. "Dog?" someone whispers. "Is that watery?" The priest narrows his eyes at you. "Muddy," he says. "Close enough. Excellent." After the priest leaves, you help clean up. There's no soap, no sponges, just ash, fiber cloths, and elbow grease. You scrub a clay bowl with crushed maize cobs until your fingerprints start to fade. It's strangely meditative. Once the kitchen is cleared, everyone prepares for the evening wind down. That's not a euphemism. It's literal. People begin to wind down. Children lay out mats. Elders stretch their backs. Someone lights a dish of coals and tosses in herbs. The smoke is thick, soothing, and smells like sleepy basil. Your guide returns and hands you a small cup of herbal infusion. It's warm, bitter, and definitely medicinal. You ask what's in it. Crushed bark. Some flour. Maybe toad water, he shrugs. You don't ask follow-up questions. As you sip the mystery, tea, someone begins to hum. A grandmotherly figure rocks slowly in a hammock, singing what sounds like a lullaby to a very shy moon. The melody loops in soft waves. It's repetitive, calming, a little sad, but in a beautiful way. Like it understands your terrible spear-throwing form and forgives you anyway. Your body finally begins to relax. The aches are still there, but duller now. The walls flicker with firelight. The air is filled with sighs and the sound of tamales digesting. You lie back on your mat. It's still too firm. It still smells like reed and dust. But somehow it feels more like a bed than it did this morning. Just as your eyelids begin to drift, a small voice whispers beside you. Don't forget to tell your dream tomorrow. You nod. No pressure. Sleep comes like a wave, not all at once, but gradually. You feel yourself sinking into the mat, into the floor, into the very calendar stones beneath the city. You are a small, breathing part of a massive, humming, sacred thing. You fall asleep in the Aztec Empire, and tomorrow you'll have to survive that all over again. You wake to the sound of water splashing and a dog licking your ear. Not just any dog, a Xoloitzcuintli again. The same hairless goblin creature from earlier, who now seems to have adopted you. His breath smells like fish and ancient secrets. You sit up slowly, spine cracking like a tortilla left out overnight. It's still early. The sky is just beginning to blush with pre-dawn light, and the courtyard is alive with quiet movement. You spot the matron stirring the coals under a cooking pot, her silhouette framed by smoke. The children are already grinding maize. Again, always the maize. You reach into your woven pouch and pull out your dream token, the little stone spiral the priest gave you. You did dream, actually. You vaguely recall being trapped inside a stepped pyramid, chased by a snake wearing a crown, while your old school principal judged you from a canoe. You decide not to share all the details. You stretch, and your joints offer an aggressive commentary on the idea. You slept on your side, then on your back, then briefly on your face, and now you're paying for all of it. The mat beneath you is basically a quilted plank, but it's starting to grow on you, like a cactus. It hurts, but it's yours. You're handed a cup of atole. Yes, again, and reminded to drink it slowly so the gods don't think you're rushing fate. You're not sure the gods are watching your cereal speed, but you nod respectfully anyway. Then it's time. The dream telling. Everyone gathers. The courtyard becomes a kind of story circle. A priest arrives, the same one from yesterday, and takes a seat beside the family fire. He carries a small pouch of cacao nibs, which he sprinkles into the flames, as a kind of offering. The smoke smells richer now, like chocolate and reverence. You're gestured forward. This is your moment. You clear your throat and begin. I dreamed. I was in a pyramid. The walls were, melting. And there was a snake, with a crown. And I was being judged. From a boat. Silence. Then, nods. The priest strokes his chin. Clearly, you carry burdens. The snake represents power, or perhaps digestive unrest. And the boat, a symbol of crossing, between worlds. You blink. The grandmother leans over. It means you should avoid tamales today. Noted. The dream ritual ends with a group chant, a short one, just a few rising syllables, directed at the east where the sun now begins to break through the haze. It's warm on your face. You exhale slowly. Not bad, considering your subconscious involved a reptilian monarchy. But before you can settle into this moment, someone shouts your name. Well, the closest version of your name in Nahuatl. Your guide appears, slightly out of breath, and announces, "Time for your punishment." You pause. "My what?" He grins. "Not for you exactly. But everyone gets one eventually." You're marched to the center of the Kalpuli, where a small crowd has formed. Apparently, yesterday, someone dropped a sacred gourd. Another forgot to sweep properly. A third insulted a goose. It's all being addressed now. The punishments are creative. One boy has to carry a basket of chili peppers up and down a slope for half an hour while reciting maize hymns. Another is being ritually ignored by everyone for the next 3 hours. A surprisingly effective psychological tactic. You, mercifully, are not on the official list, but since you're a guest, they let you observe from the front. One girl is being gently hit with reeds while everyone chants, "Do not forget the gods in the beans." You don't know what she did, but she accepts her fate with grace. Historians still argue whether these community punishments were primarily educational or symbolic, but there's no denying their theatrical efficiency. You're taking notes, metaphorically, with your eyes. Eventually, the punishments conclude and the mood lightens. The local children begin to play a game involving a ball made of rubber and a court marked with carved stones. It's not Tlachtli, the big league version, but a simpler version meant for practice. You're invited to try. You regret trying. The ball is absurdly heavy. The rules are unclear. You're not allowed to use your hands or your feet, just your hips and maybe your elbows if you're lucky. You fling yourself toward the ball with all the grace of a startled armadillo and miss it entirely. It rolls under a bench and startles a sleeping turkey. The children laugh kindly. The turkey does not. Eventually, you manage to bounce the ball off your thigh and into a wall. Everyone cheers. You beam with pride. A small child immediately does a somersault and scores in the actual goal. You sit down, humbled once again. You rest in the shade for a bit. sipping water from a clay cup and watching the city buzz in the midday sun. In the distance, you see merchants unloading goods from canoes, women grinding herbs, and a group of musicians rehearsing for the afternoon's rain ceremony. A man walks past with a basket of frogs. Just frogs. No explanation. A local noble arrives, in a litter carried by 4 attendants. He wears a tunic embroidered with jade beads and a headdress made of brilliant quetzal feathers. Everyone bows as he passes. Even the frogs look nervous, and here you are, barefoot, sore, and slightly burnt from whatever was in that dream tea, but still standing. You haven't fainted, you haven't insulted a god, you haven't been ritually ignored. You are, by some miracle, surviving the day. But don't get too comfortable. You haven't seen what the rain ceremony involves yet. You're escorted toward the edge of the neighborhood, where a stone platform juts out into the open air, overlooking a canal. The breeze here is cooler, laced with the scent of wet earth and crushed marigolds. This is the site for the Tlaloc, offering the rain god. Or as you now think of him, the one who might, if properly pleased, not ruin everyone's crops and dreams. Preparations are already underway. Children with faces painted blue and white are arranging offerings. Bowls of amaranth, bundles of flowers, tiny frogs, again with the frogs, and several incense burners shaped like grumpy clouds. A priest chants softly nearby, throwing copal onto a charcoal brazier. The smoke snakes upward in solemn spirals. You're handed a handful of corn kernels and instructed to present them with humility. You ask, "How humble?" Your guide replies, as if the sky personally disapproves of your haircut. "Fair." The ceremony begins with a conch shell blast. It echoes off the stone walls and ripples over the water. Everyone falls silent. The priest raises his arms to the sky and begins a rhythmic chant to Tlaloc, god of rain, storms, and sudden agricultural panic. His voice rises and falls like thunder through fog. You're encouraged to join in. You try. Your pronunciation is shaky, your rhythm questionable, and you nearly inhale incense smoke, but you hold your ground. Children begin dancing in a slow circle, stomping lightly in rhythm. They wear shell anklets that jingle with every step. The effect is mesmerizing. The priest leads the chant through invocations of Tlaloc's many names, he who makes things wet, a direct translation that somehow feels both powerful and a little passive-aggressive. The dripper, the cloud lord. A girl steps forward and sprinkles water onto the earth from a ceramic bowl. Another tosses petals into the canal. You're gestured forward. It's your turn. You step onto the platform, trying not to look terrified. You place your corn kernels onto a reed mat and bow. Not too deeply. Your back still remembers javelin. Practice, but enough to seem spiritually engaged. The priest nods. The sky does not thunder. That's a win. And then, suddenly, the drums begin. Not the soft, ceremonial kind. These are the big ones. The kind you felt in your bones before sunrise. They boom across the plaza like a slow heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Your knees start to buzz. A procession arrives. Musicians, dancers, people carrying large clay effigies of Tlaloc with googly frog eyes and comically fierce frowns. A boy in a headdress made of grass and snail shells leads the way, balancing, a bowl of blue-coloured maize dough on his head, like a champion of balance and anxiety. The mood turns festive. Not cheerful, exactly. This is still a solemn request to a potentially very grumpy sky deity, but there's a kind of sacred energy in the air. The children now throw water at each other in mock play. Elders laugh softly. A man blows a clay whistle shaped like a jaguar, and it lets out a sound that is deeply upsetting. You're handed another object, a bundle of soaked reeds. Your job, apparently, is to beat the ground politely. You squint. Politely? Yes, says your guide. Firm but respectful, as if waking a sleeping turtle. You begin thwacking the earth with hesitant enthusiasm. This is a symbolic act, meant to summon rain by mimicking its sound. You are, essentially, pretending to be a weather system. It's oddly satisfying. everyone joins in. The courtyard becomes a symphony of slaps, stamps, whistles and whistles that sound suspiciously like small animals in distress. And then, just as the priest raises his hands for the final invocation, a drop. One drop. Right on your forehead. You freeze. Then another, and another. Gasps ripple through the crowd. It's raining. Not hard, not dramatic. Just enough to dot the earth with dark patches and send the frogs into a chorus of tiny screams. The priest beams. Children dance faster. A woman yells, "He is pleased," and throws more petals into the air. You look up, rain dripping down your face, and laugh. It's part relief, part awe, part thank the amphibious sky god, I didn't mess this up. Historians still argue whether ceremonies like these actually influenced rain patterns. But for those who lived here, there was no question. This wasn't performance. It was partnership. The gods were active, listening, unpredictable. And you just helped convince one of them to sprinkle a little blessing down on the chinampas. As the rain tapers off, you help gather the offerings. The clay effigies are stored safely. The flowers are scattered into the canal. The priest gives you a nod, barely perceptible, but it feels like a thumbs up from the weather gods. You walk home through puddles. The dust is gone, replaced by the clean scent of damp soil and wet corn husks. Your feet squish with every step. And for once, you don't mind. Even the slowest seems content, wagging his tail like he knew this would happen all along. Back at the house, the matron hands you a fresh tamale, stuffed with mushrooms, steamed in the rain's honor. It's warm, earthy, and better than anything you've tasted all day. You've earned this bite. You've survived the ceremony, and you've pleased a rain god. But the evening's not over yet. There's still the matter of your dreams. Again. Back at the house, your clothes are damp, your spirit is buoyed, and your hair smells faintly of ash and ceremonial corn. The rain was brief, but holy, the kind that makes elders mutter blessings under their breath, and children run around like geese in a grain field. You sit beneath the awning, chewing the last bite of that mushroom tamale, soft, warm, vaguely smoky, and wonder, just for a moment, if you're actually starting to acclimate. Then someone gently taps you on the shoulder. It's the grandmother again, holding a small gourd cup filled with something murky and suspicious. "Tonight's dream water," she says, with a smile that implies both comfort and mischief. "Drink all." You take it with reverence and mild concern. The liquid is slightly sweet, very bitter, and tingles as it goes down. You're informed. It includes crushed marigold, roasted cacao shell, and the essence of something called cloud flower. You ask what that is. She says, "The flower that teaches clouds to sleep." Of course it does. Soon after, you're ushered into a small back chamber. This is the Tenochtitlan, the dream house. It's a quiet space, round and low-roofed, covered in mats and lined with bundles of dried herbs and soft feathers. The walls are painted with soft spirals and small eyes, stylized depictions of Xolotl, your guardian deity of underworld journeys and awkward dream interpretation. You're instructed to lie down and meditate on a question. Ask your heart what it fears, the grandmother whispers, then see what the gods reply. You want to ask if it's okay for your heart to be afraid of spicy insects and public chanting, but instead, you just close your eyes and breathe. The air in the dream house is thick, warm, quiet, except for the distant croak of frogs and the occasional snore from a nearby relative. You think of jaguar masks, spiraling codices, the slow pound of drums. You think of the spear you failed to throw, the frog god you might have mildly offended, and the little child who laughed when you stubbed your toe. You drift. Time passes like mist. Then, somewhere between sleep and memory, you find yourself dreaming again. In the dream, you're in the marketplace, but it's empty, silent. The stalls are there, but they're covered in vines. A hummingbird flits by, then turns into a snake mid-flight and dives into a basket of maize. You open your mouth to speak, but sand pours out instead. The sky is purple, the lake is dry, and your shadow has feathers. You wake with a gasp. The grandmother is already there, sitting beside you with a bowl of steaming herbs. "Tell it," she says gently. You recount the dream, carefully, slowly. She nods as you go, occasionally stirring the bowl or muttering an agreement. When you're finished, she gives you her interpretation. "The hummingbird is your soul," she says. "Restless, fast, hungry. The snake is your fear. The maize is your purpose." You squint. "So, I'm afraid of my purpose." "No," she says. "You're just bad at sharing." You blink. That tracks. She adds, "Purple sky means change. Feathers in shadow mean the gods are watching, possibly amused." You thank her, though you're not sure what any of this truly means. Still, the ritual is soothing. There's something deeply human about being seen by a culture, a god, or even just a sharp-eyed grandmother. As dawn starts to bleed into the sky, you help her hang new bundles of herbs to dry. Sage, marigold, epazote. She teaches you their names in Nahuatl, correcting your vowels with a poke and a laugh. You repeat each word softly, your tongue stumbling but trying. Outside, the family begins to stir. More maize grinding, more sweeping. Life already back in motion. You eat breakfast quietly. This time, it's thick tortillas with a paste of ground beans and a thin slice of squash blossom. You're starting to appreciate the simplicity, the balance, the unspoken prayer in every bite. Then comes news. You're going to the temple, not the neighborhood shrine this time, the big one, the Templo Mayor at the heart of Tenochtitlan. You glance at your feet, still sore, still sandalless, but also curious, intrigued, terrified. Your guide smirks. You'll want to be on your best behavior. The gods there are important. You swallow the last of your tamale and nod, because apparently your journey isn't quite over. There's one more mountain to climb, one more god to face, one more chance to mispronounce something sacred and mildly offend the forces of thunder, maize, and war. It's going to be a long day. Again. You set out toward the heart of the empire, feet sore but brain buzzing. The path to the Templo Mayor, the great temple of Tenochtitlan, is both literal and symbolic. It's the spine of the city, the belly button of the cosmos, the beating drum in a chest made of stone, gods, and civic planning. The causeways are alive with traffic. Canoes slide through the canals on either side, loaded with squash, firewood, and at least one suspiciously large iguana. Pedestrians brush past you, traders, priests, scribes, warriors, vendors hawking necklaces made of fish bones and obsidian shards. You even pass a traveling entertainer playing a bone flute while balancing on stilts. His stilts are also made of bones. He nods at you solemnly. You nod back, because what else do you do? The deeper into the city you go, the more the energy thickens. The great temple looms ahead, two massive staircases rising side by side, one dedicated to Tlaloc, god of rain, and the other to Huitzilopochtli, god of sun and war. The entire pyramid is whitewashed and painted in reds and blues that practically vibrate under the midday sun. At the top, twin shrines, twin altars, twin. Headaches for anyone afraid of heights. You swallow hard. The base is teeming with activity. Priests shuffle past in long cloaks dusted with ash. Merchants sell food and sacred trinkets. Scribes sit cross-legged, writing in pictograms on bark paper. A group of acolytes scurries by with bundles of feathers so brightly coloured they might have been harvested from a mythical chicken. You're told to purify yourself before approaching. This involves incense, a symbolic splash of water, and a brief moment where someone circles you 3 times while muttering a chant. You're not entirely sure what the chant says, but you do feel vaguely refreshed and slightly dizzy afterward. And then, the stairs. There are so many stairs. Your guide beams. It's only about 100 steps. One for each breath of respect. You take a deep breath and begin. Each step is steep, narrow, and very much designed to make you consider the weight of your soul. You try to stay focused, but your thighs are on fire. Your sandals are imaginary, and the man behind you is humming a death chant very cheerfully. Halfway up, you pause to catch your breath and glance out over the city. It's breathtaking. Tenochtitlan sprawls in every direction. Orderly canals, floating gardens, clusters of white stone houses, markets teeming with color and motion. The lake sparkles in the sunlight. Mountains loom in the distance. You forget for just a second how absolutely out of your depth you are. Then someone behind you coughs pointedly. You climb the rest of the way with what remains of your dignity. At the top, the view is sacred. You stand between the two shrines, one cool and damp, shaded with water jars and decorated with frog imagery, Tlaloc's domain. The other is brighter, hotter, flanked by painted skulls and giant feather banners. Clearly Huitzilopochtli's turf. You're told to bow at both. You do so, knees cracking audibly. The priests here are older, more elaborately dressed. They eye you with a blend of curiosity and ancient judgment. One asks you to recite the purpose of your visit. You blank completely. Your guide covers smoothly. This one is here to observe and to learn humility. They nod. He has done well in that. You're not sure whether to feel honored or mildly roasted. Then comes the surprise. You are invited into Huitzilopochtli's shrine. It's dark, warm, scented with burnt resin and what might be chili. The walls are covered in murals of mythic battles. Feathered serpents lash across stone. Suns and moons clash in stylized explosions. In the center, a statue. Tall, imposing, face masked in turquoise, eyes inlaid with obsidian. It holds a serpent, scepter, and wears a hummingbird helmet. You stare up at it. It doesn't blink because it's a statue, but it feels like it's watching you. You are handed a small bowl of marigold petals and told to sprinkle them at the statue's feet. You do so, carefully. They land softly, silently. Your breath catches in your throat. The priest mutters a prayer. You think it includes the word soft-footed, which could either be a compliment or an insult about your pacing. You are blessed with a dab of red dye on your forehead. It tingles. Then you're gently escorted outside. A bell rings below. A new ceremony is starting. Public, festive, slightly chaotic. You're invited to watch from the edge. Down below, dancers are gathering. Drummers begin to beat a rhythm so deep your ribs remember it. People start throwing flower petals, waving incense, and, unexpectedly, releasing butterflies from a reed. Cage. Dozens of them. Blue, orange, gold. They rise like sparks into the sky. Someone explains, this is for renewal, for the city, for the sun. You watch the butterflies drift higher and higher until they vanish in the bright light above the temple. You sit at the edge of the platform and exhale. Your muscles still ache. Your brain still struggles to process the layers of ritual and meaning. But you feel alive. Small, but alive. And somehow welcome, even if everyone knows you're a total tourist from a future that doesn't even exist yet. You survived the Templo Mea. And for once, no one made you throw a spear. You descend the 100 temple steps with the grace of someone trying very hard not to die in front of religious officials. Each step is a negotiation between dignity and gravity. Halfway down, you pause to pretend you're admiring the architecture, but truly, you're just catching your breath and checking that your knees still function. By the time your feet reach the plaza floor, they've fully filed a complaint with the rest of your body. You are now walking like someone who has deeply wronged several gods of cartilage. Your guide pats you on the shoulder and says, "Good. Now we go to the ball court." You blink. "The what?" He grins. "You've heard of Tlachtli, yes?" "Ah, yes. The infamous Mesoamerican ball game. The one that's part sport, part ritual, apart chaos. The one where the ball is solid rubber and weighs roughly the same as a family secret. The one with rules nobody fully agrees on, but everyone agrees is hard on the hips. You are not ready. The court is a wide, stone-floored rectangle flanked by sloped walls. Carvings of serpents, warriors, and mythological beasts curl around the edges. At each end, high up on the walls, are stone hoops. Through these, in theory, the ball is supposed to pass. In practice, that rarely happens. It's like trying to dunk a bowling ball with your pelvis. There's already a crowd gathered. Locals watch from the sidelines. Young men stretch, limber, up, and casually slam the ball against the ground with enough force to startle a nearby squirrel. You're handed a padded loincloth and a chest wrap. You hold them up like someone who's just been handed a live eel. Your guide shrugs. You only have to try. You change in a curtained stall and step onto the court, feeling exactly like someone who made a series of bad choices that led to this moment. The ball is placed in front of you. The players begin to chant softly, a rhythm to focus the spirit. You stand awkwardly between two teammates who are already scuffed, sweaty, and intensely focused. They glance at you and smirk. The game begins. Someone hurls the ball. You instinctively reach out with your hand. Mistake. The crowd gasps. Someone hisses. Hands are not allowed. Hands are offensive. Hands are for cooking tamales and apologizing. To priests, not touching sacred rubber projectiles. The ball rebounds off your forearm and into your side with the gentle impact of a horse kick. You stagger, but remain upright. Victory. Your teammates recover. The ball is launched, bounced, hip-checked, shoulder-thumped. It ricochets with such speed and unpredictability that you begin to suspect the laws of physics have been temporarily suspended for dramatic effect. You, meanwhile, do your best to shuffle into the background and not get flattened. You finally get another chance. Ball bouncing toward you like an angry melon. You twist, thrust your hip, and actually connect. The ball flies. It arcs gloriously through the air and smashes into a ceremonial drum on the sidelines. The crowd cheers anyway. It's a good try. Or perhaps they're just thrilled you didn't injure anyone this time. A brief timeout is called. One player from the other team offers you water. Another offers you advice. Think like a jaguar, not a fish. You nod. You have no idea what that means, but it feels like something worth writing down. Historians still argue whether Tlachtli was primarily religious, political, or recreational. But what you've gathered in the last few minutes is, it's definitely not relaxing. The game ends when a player from your team finally scores, not through the stone ring, but with a series of skillful rebounds that earn respectful applause. Your contribution is noted as enthusiastic flailing. You'll take it. You're helped off the court, handed a fresh cloth to wipe your face, and poured a drink that tastes vaguely of honey, chili, and something floral. You're told it's for energy and courage. You quietly rename it Emergency Recovery Juice. The rest of the afternoon unfolds in a blur. You're guided through the artisan district, filled with sculptors chiseling tiny gods from volcanic rock, weavers knotting thread dyed with crushed cochineal beetles, and featherworkers delicately assembling cloaks so dazzling they look like lightning in textile form. You watch a man paint codices, folding books filled with symbols, stories, and calendrical knowledge. He's using a thin brush made from agave fiber. His hand is steady. Each glyph he paints looks alive, like it might flutter off the page if you blink too long. You ask what he's writing. He replies, "The journey of a dreamer." You nod. That checks out. Later, you're led to a calm pond surrounded by reeds. The Zoloit Squintly from earlier trots beside you, as if summoned by narrative necessity. He dips a toe in the water, then curls beside your feet. You take off your makeshift sandals, truly just folded cactus leather at this point, and dangle your legs into the cool, clear water. Dragonflies flit above the surface. Frogs croak in the reeds. The city hums around you, a living organism of stone, maize, and memory. And for once, no one's asking you to chant, sweep, or dodge a ball with your hips. You close your eyes. You breathe. You are, miraculously, still here. You eventually open your eyes to the unmistakable sound of something being prepared. It's hard to describe, but it's the specific sort of rhythmic chopping, splashing, and ceremonial humming that usually signals you're about to be volunteered for something. Your guide returns. He looks refreshed. You, in contrast, have the posture of a melting tamale. You rested, he says approvingly. Good. You'll need your strength. You know what that means. He doesn't answer your sigh, just gestures toward a courtyard near the temple complex, where people are gathering. Many of them are dressed in fine cotton tunics painted with blue waves and green curls, symbols of Chalchutlikyu, goddess of lakes, rivers, and all things watery. She is revered for her gentleness and occasionally her floods. You're invited to participate in her feast. Now the word feast raises your hopes. Unfortunately, Aztec feasts are not all about gluttony. They're about reverence, ritual, and being really careful not to insult a deity who can literally drown a city if she's in a mood. The ceremony begins with flower garlands. You're handed one made of marigolds and water lilies. It's draped over your shoulders with a whispered blessing. Then you're painted, a swirl of blue dye across your cheeks and a splash of green on your arms. Someone dots your forehead with white. You look like a mural in progress. The priestesses begin to sing. It's soft at first, almost a murmur, but it swells into layered harmonies, the kind that seem to come from both the air and the stone beneath your feet. Their voices rise and fall like waves, and the courtyard becomes a sea of sound and scent. Steam from cooking pots, incense from burning herbs, the faint sour bite of fermented cactus sap. A clay bowl is passed to you. Inside is mixmole, a stew made of beans, chili, and tiny fish. The broth is thick and smoky. You sip carefully, because this isn't just food, it's an offering. Every bite is sacred. You finish it reverently. It's surprisingly delicious. Then comes the procession. Everyone stands, turns to the east, and begins a slow walk toward the lake. You're handed a small reed boat, barely bigger than your palm. Inside, a sliver of amaranth cake, a flower, and a few drops of pulque. It's an offering to the lake spirits, tiny, edible diplomacy. You reach the lake shore just as the sun dips toward the horizon. The water gleams orange and gold. Frogs croak, dragonflies hover. Everyone goes quiet. The priestess gives a signal, and one by one, people place their reed boats on the water. They float gently outward, spinning slightly, catching the wind. Yours drifts a little crookedly, but it stays afloat. Success. Someone beside you whispers, "If it sinks, the goddess is bored." You exhale. Yours bobs merrily toward a lily pad. She is, thankfully, entertained. A prayer is recited. It includes references to ancient floods, rebirth, and the sacredness of bathing regularly. A subtle nod, perhaps, to how hot you smell after a day of hip ball sports and temple stair climbing. After the ceremony, everyone gathers for the cleansing. You're gently pulled aside into a stream of people filing into the shallows of the lake. Clothes are kept on. This is spiritual cleansing, not spring break. But the effect is powerful. The water is cool, ankle deep, and strangely soothing. A priest flicks water onto your forehead and mutters, "Clear your burdens." You mutter, "I have many." He adds a second flick. You splash water over your arms and legs, and for a moment, you do feel lighter, less foreign, less overwhelmed. You're handed a woven towel and a piece of roasted cactus fruit afterward, as if to say, "Well done. You've not drowned, angered a god, or tripped over your ceremonial boat. That's 3 wins." As the sun disappears completely, the city changes. Tenochtitlan at night is something else entirely. Fires flicker in clay lanterns, Music echoes from courtyards, flutes, drums, soft chants. Market stalls dim, but don't close. People still. Barter by firelight. Street dogs curl under benches. Couples stroll past temple walls, speaking softly about dreams and weather signs. Your guide leads you back through quieter streets. You did well, he says. The goddess was pleased. You nod, wiping lake water from your ear. Then he stops. You've been invited to a noble household for evening reflection, he says, casually. You groan. I just reflected, he grins. Now you reflect with style. The noble household is enormous, walled, and quiet as a library. Inside, painted murals depict gods mid-transformation, serpents with fire tongues, maize spirits emerging from cracked skulls, suns with human hearts in their mouths. You pretend to study them wisely, while your brain quietly says, "That's a lot of symbolism to unpack before bedtime." You're seated on a woven mat, given a cup of cacao. Not the bitter warrior brew this time. This version is sweeter, spiced with chili and vanilla. A treat for guests. You sip it with gratitude and mild trembling. Then the noble enters. He's older, but walks with perfect posture. His cloak is dyed a rare deep blue and decorated with jade. His gaze is sharp. You've walked far, he says, and not just on the earth. You nod, not sure if he means dreams or actual hiking. He gestures to the mural behind him. What do you see? You take a long look. There's a jaguar standing on a pyramid, surrounded by stars, and what looks like a snail. With legs, you offer your best. A reminder that even strength must be patient. He raises an eyebrow, then nods. You may sleep. Here tonight, he says, which is noble speak for. You pass the vibe check. You're led to a side chamber of the noble's home. A quiet space with high, slanted ceilings made of polished beams and soft reed mat flooring that somehow feels less judgmental than the one you slept on before. A servant places a small clay dish by your head, filled with water and a sprig of marigold. It's a gesture of protection, meant to keep nightmares from getting too bold. You're starting to get used to sleeping in rooms that double as spiritual fortresses. Your mat is positioned beneath a mural showing the night sky, stylized stars, moon deities, and one particularly aggressive-looking rabbit dancing on a disc. You squint. Your guide whispers, "That's the moon rabbit. He sacrificed himself once. Now he pounds agave on the moon." You nod. Of course he does. You're given a cloak to sleep under, light and embroidered with a pattern of waves and stars. You wrap it around yourself, feeling oddly regal, then lie back and stare at the painted constellations. Somewhere outside, drums echo softly from another neighborhood. Not the thunderous, frantic kind from earlier. These are gentler, lulling. A bedtime rhythm for a city that never really sleeps, but occasionally dozes in shifts. You're drifting off when a servant quietly enters with a question from the noble. Would you like to speak your dreams again in the morning? You hesitate. Say yes. What else can you say? You're basically a part-time apprentice to the gods now. You sleep. You dream. This time, the dream is calmer, if surreal. You're floating down a canal in a canoe made of flowers. The water is deep, blue, but it smells like mesa. A dog swims beside you, his eyes glowing. He tells you to turn left at the jaguar. You do. The jaguar is reading a scroll. You wake up before reaching your destination. At dawn, you're brought a bowl of amaranth porridge and a single roasted fig. Luxurious, quiet, and just a little sticky. You eat it slowly while sitting cross-legged. Beneath the mural, the painted moon rabbit staring down like he knows exactly what kind of dreams you had. Then you're summoned to speak with the noble again. This time, he's seated beside a large brazier, flames flickering lazily. He gestures for you to sit, then asks, "Your dream?" You describe the canoe, the dog, the jaguar reading. He nods along, face unreadable. Finally, he says, "You are being guided." Water leads you. Knowledge awaits you. But the scroll must be read. You think, silently, I should have asked the jaguar what it said. The noble reaches into a woven basket and pulls out something unexpected, a small folded square of dyed bark paper. He hands it to you. Draw what you remember. You hesitate. You have the artistic talent of a distracted pigeon, but you obey. You sketch your dream: wobbly canoe, over-friendly dog, very confused jaguar. The noble watches, occasionally sips cacao. When you're finished, he takes the paper, studies it, and simply says, keep going. That's it. That's your reward. Cryptic encouragement from a man who wears more jade than most jewelry stores carry. You nod, unsure if this is a profound honor or just breakfast theater. Later, back in the street, your guide greets you with a raised brow. You survived noble reflection, he says. Impressive. You ask him what's next. He grins. Time to learn your market value. You blink. My what? You're going to sell something. He drags you toward a side market, not the grand Tlatelolco one, but a smaller community version. Colourful tarps hang overhead. Chickens cluck. Someone is very aggressively bartering for squash. A man sells whistles shaped like angry lizards. You're handed a small woven basket filled with beads made of dried seeds, a few polished shells, and some tufts of dyed rabbit fur. These, your guide says, are your wares. Trade them. You are not prepared. The first customer examines the rabbit fur, sniffs it, and walks away. The second offers you a fish. A very fishy fish. You politely decline. The third gives you a rock and tells you it's magical. You trade him 2 shells for it, mostly because you like his confidence. You spend an hour floundering. By the end of it, you've acquired 1 frog amulet, a slightly lopsided tamale, 3 chili peppers, and a whistle shaped like a hummingbird that only works when you're not trying. Your guide inspects your haul. You are either very bad at commerce, he says, or a genius of abstract value. You decide to take that as praise. The sun climbs higher. You're sent to sit beneath an awning with a group of local children who share their food with you. Sweet roasted corn, mango slices, a piece of dried fruit so spicy it nearly reboots your soul. They giggle as you cough. One of them offers you water and a slice of something called sleep herb. You don't ask questions, you just chew. Then a boy leans forward and asks, "Do you miss your world?" You pause. He smiles. It shows, in your eyes. You nod slowly. It's very different. He thinks for a moment, then shrugs. So is tomorrow, but we still walk into it. You stare at this miniature philosopher. How old are you? 7, he says, then blows into his lizard whistle and runs away. The sun begins to sink again. Another day, nearly over. You've dreamed, you've traded, you've been philosophically outwitted by a child. You're still standing, barefoot, bewildered, and ever so slightly changed. The shadows stretch long across the cobbled plaza as you make your way back through the maze of reed fences and low-slung houses. The sky has begun its familiar gradient shift, from brilliant blue to dusty rose to a purplish hue that always feels a little too wise. Tenochtitlan exhales. Chickens settle. Vendors pack up. Somewhere, a parrot swears creatively in Nahuatl. You've survived yet another Aztec day. And now, as if summoned by the gods of plot structure, you're informed there's to be a storytelling gathering. You'd hope for a quiet evening of staring at the ceiling and asking yourself why jaguars keep showing up in your dreams. But no. This society loves its oral traditions almost as much as it loves stairs and maize. Your guide beams. Tonight's Kwikani, a poet-singer, will perform. Rare chance. You nod with a mix of awe and subtle existential fatigue. The storytelling circle takes place in a communal courtyard, illuminated by fire bowls and woven lanterns filled with fireflies. People settle onto mats and low stools. You're handed a cup of spice poke, fermented sap, slightly fizzy, and strong enough to make your eyebrows question your choices. You sip cautiously. The Kwikani arrives barefoot, cloaked in a mantle, dyed with indigo and gold. Her hair is tied with feathers. Her eyes look like they've seen several worlds. She sits, cradles a tiny drum, and begins with a rhythm so soft you feel it more than hear it. Then the song begins. It's not just music, it's memory, a tale of the fifth sun, of sacrifice, of the gods debating in the fire, of stars birthed by blood and promises. Her voice dips and soars, painting the cosmos with syllables. The listeners hum along when the tune allows. The elders close their eyes. The children lean forward, mouths open. You don't understand every word, but you understand enough. The story is about endurance, cycles, becoming a small part of something enormous and strange and sacred. As she sings of the first maize sprouting from a broken mountain, a wind picks up. A few petals blow across the courtyard. Everyone looks up, just briefly, as if even the wind is listening. When she finishes, there is no applause, just silence, the good kind, the kind that means people are full. The fire bowls crackle. One child mutters, "I hope I dream of that mountain." Another asks if it's true the gods argued like families do. The grandmother says yes, and worse. They held grudges. You sip the last of your pulque and feel it settle behind your eyes like a warm, soft fog. Then, because the Aztec Empire believes in keeping you humble, you're invited to share a story. You blink. Me? Yes. The guide grins. A small one from your place. You panic. Your place has microwaves and insurance claims. What are you supposed to do? Recite the plot of Finding Nemo? But the group waits kindly, so you clear your throat and begin. You speak slowly, choosing a memory from childhood, a time you got lost in the woods, how the trees looked impossibly tall, how a small dog led you back home. You tweak it, of course. Add a few symbolic frogs. Mention a wise squirrel. Make it sound ancient. They listen, nodding. When you finish, a small girl whispers, "That squirrel was your guardian, like Xolotl." The group murmurs agreement. A priest nods once, solemnly. You're not sure if you've just written folklore, but hey, you've contributed. Later, you help carry the fire bowls back to their cradles. The coals glow low. You can feel the day inside your limbs. Not exhaustion exactly, just the weight of time passed through. Back at your host's house, you're given another dream token. This one shaped like a fish, carved from shell. "It swims through fog," the matron says. "Use it well." You lie on your mat, wrapping yourself in the light-woven cloak. The stars blink above, through the open slats of the ceiling. Somewhere in the distance, a jaguar roars, or maybe yawns. It's hard to tell with jaguars. Your last thought before sleep is, you're not entirely bad at this. Dreams find you quickly. This time, you're standing on a bridge made of maize stalks. A storm brews above, but the wind sings instead of screams. You walk forward. The bridge wobbles. The water below churns with fish and feathers. Ahead, a small house floats in the mist. A familiar dog waits at the door. You knock and wake up. You wake slowly this time. No drums, no dog tongue in your ear, no sudden spiritual exams. Just the soft creak of woven walls warming in the sun, the distant call of a flute, and the gentle scritch-scritch of someone nearby grinding maize. Your body doesn't hurt today, well, not in the same dramatic way. It's more of a background hum, like your muscles are still trying to figure out if they live here now. The matron greets you with a cup of warm amaranth gruel, a slice of roasted squash, and a smile that somehow says both good morning and you have more things to do. You eat slowly, staring at your fish-shaped dream token. It did its job. You're rested, but you're also starting to realize something. You're not a tourist anymore. You're a functional, if slightly odd, citizen of the Aztec Empire. You ask your guide what's planned for today, expecting perhaps a stroll or some poetic birdwatching. He grins. Today you learn about class. You blink. Like school class? No, he says. The kind that tells you who cleans the altar and who gets to own the altar. Ah, social structure. Always a party. He begins by leading you to the edge of the marketplace. Not the stalls this time, but the people. You're introduced to a family of potters, hands always dusted with red clay, their wares simple but beautiful. Bowls, incense holders, tiny figurines of gods with amused expressions. The father explains how his work is sacred, but still lower class. Then you visit a pochteka, a long-distance trader who deals in luxury goods. His courtyard is massive, his clothes spotless, his chin high enough to detect altitude. He offers you dried cacao nibs and a speech about the burdens of commerce. He smells faintly of ambition. Next, a warrior household. Your guide introduces you, and the man inside, lean, scarred, eyes like flint, barely nods. His home is sparse. His tunic is plain, but his obsidian-bladed macuahuitl hangs like an honored guest on the wall. He tells you he has taken 4 captives in battle and is one away from earning Eagle Warrior status. How many do I need, you ask? He looks you over. A miracle. Fair. Afterward, your guide walks you through a neighborhood of priests. It's quieter, full of painted walls and shrines. These people are the keepers of knowledge, rituals, calendars, and the gods' ever-changing moods. One priestess is painting a scroll with pigment made from crushed insects. She tells you she once dreamed she became a hummingbird, and no one has dared question her since. You ask if anyone can become a priest. Your guide shrugs. Yes, if chosen, or if your family is wealthy, or if you hear voices from the sky and don't immediately panic. You stop walking. He pats your shoulder. Then you ask about Macahualtin, the commoners. Isn't that what I've been living as? You ask. Yes, he replies, but without the lifetime of expectations. The commoners are the builders, the farmers, the carriers of water and firewood, the grinders of maize, the caretakers of temples and streets. Their life is full of labor, but also full of pride. You speak with a woman who's spent her whole life raising ducks and corn on the chinampas. She offers you roasted duck eggs and says, if the gods want a temple, someone has to build it. I carry stones with a smile. It's hard not to admire her. Then you ask the dangerous question, can anyone rise, change class? There's a pause. Your guide sighs. Yes, but. There's always a but. Yes, if you're a warrior who captures many enemies. Yes, if you're a merchant who grows very rich. Yes, if a priest sees something in you. But also no, because you'll still be the person who carried firewood, and people will remember. Historians still argue whether the Aztec social system was rigid or more flexible than we think. The truth seems to lie in the in-between. Opportunities existed, but reputations were sticky. Your birth mattered, but so did your deeds. And sometimes, the gods themselves just decided. Later, you witness a public trial. It's held in a shaded courtyard with a small platform where a local judge, respected, ancient, and draped in white, listens to a dispute between 2 farmers. One claims the other stole maize. The accused says it was his field, just a poorly marked corner. The judge listens, asks questions, studies a bark paper map drawn by a scribe. Then, softly but firmly, he delivers judgment. Return the maize, offer 2 days' labor, and apologize to the maize spirit for the confusion. That last part's not optional. The farmers nod, bow, and clasp hands. Dispute resolved. Your guide whispers, the law is for order and the gods, and mostly so, nobody starts hitting each other with farming tools. You ask about punishment for bigger crimes. He replies, depends. Theft, compensation, repeated theft, branding. adultery, death, insulting a noble, death, cutting down the wrong tree. That could go either way. You blink. The wrong tree? Yes. He nods. Some trees are sacred. Others are just trees. Guess wrong, and it's a bad afternoon. You spend the rest of the day helping the chinampa farmers, collect water plants, and weave them into fertilizer bundles. It's hard, wet work, but oddly satisfying. You learn how to tie the reeds so they don't float away. You manage to not fall into the lake. The grandmother from earlier smiles at you and says, "You would make a fine commoner." You take it, as a compliment. As the sun sets, you return to your host family's home. Dinner is corn stew and roasted squash again, but you eat it with real hunger. Your muscles ache, your feet are permanently shaped like the causeway, and your class is somewhere between well-meaning foreigner and slightly confused duck. But you've started to understand this world. You're not just surviving, you're adapting. Nightfall settles across Tenochtitlan, like a woven cloak of obsidian and moonlight. The city doesn't go quiet exactly, it hums differently. Day sounds are replaced with the softer rhythms of domestic life. Mortars grinding, low voices, the swish of brooms against stone. Somewhere nearby, a flute player practices, repeating the same note like he's trying to hypnotize a cloud. You're walking back from the lakeshore, arms full of kindling, when your guide stops suddenly. He looks at the sky, squints, and says with all the casual weight of an impending event, "Don't sleep too deeply tonight." You pause. Why? He points to the horizon. It takes a second to see it. A glimmer. Not lightning. Not a star. Something flickering. "Tonight is the night watch," he says. "Everyone takes turns. Turns doing what? Watching. For jaguars, apparently." You laugh. He doesn't. Some nights, they come into the city, if the priests haven't fed the boundaries enough, or if someone dreamed poorly and forgot to tell the fire. Your laugh dies a quiet death inside your chest. So you join the watch. You're taken to a rooftop where a group of men and women sit wrapped in cloaks, facing different directions, each holding a small clay lantern and a spear. You're handed a torch. It flickers, uncertain. You're more uncertain. Your shift is south, which is probably arbitrary, but also maybe cosmically important. You don't ask. You just take your seat and wait. The sky is utterly clear. The stars are as sharp as obsidian points. You can hear frogs, crickets, the occasional splash from a canoe, and something else, something rhythmic, breathing, drumming, or just your heartbeat, louder than it should be. Your fellow watchers don't speak much. Occasionally, one murmurs a prayer or taps the rim of their lantern 3 times. It's not clear if it's protocol or just superstition, but you do it too. It can't hurt. An hour passes, then another. You begin to imagine things, shadows that twitch leaves that move, sounds you can't trace. You hold your torch tighter. Your eyes water from staring. Then, out of the corner of your vision, movement. You stiffen, a shape. Low, quiet, sliding across a rooftop like smoke with muscle. It pauses. You blink. It's gone. You exhale too loudly. Someone nudges you. Don't chase it. If it wants to be seen, it will come closer. That is not comforting. This is the Aztec night. Not romantic moon strolls. Not soft lullabies. It's a world of vigilance, of boundary watching, of believing that the thin veil between human and divine grows thinner when the stars come out. Historians still argue whether these night watches were literal guard shifts or more spiritual, ritualistic duties. But tonight, you're deeply convinced it's both. Eventually, your shift ends. You pass your torch to the next watcher, bow slightly, and shuffle down the stairs, legs stiff, eyes dry. You're rewarded with a small bowl of warmed cacao. Bitter, earthy, thick. Someone pats your back and says, "If you saw nothing, that's good. If you saw something, that's a warning." You decide not to clarify which it was. Later, you return to your mat, and collapse. But sleep doesn't come right away. Your body is tired, but your mind is sprinting. You think about how casually this world dances between the real and the sacred. How jaguars are both animals and omens. How dreams are maps. How stairs are everywhere. Eventually, sleep pulls you under again. And the dream. You're standing on a temple rooftop. Below you, the city is silent. A jaguar sits beside you, calmly licking its paw. It turns to you and says, "You forgot to tell the fire." You wake with a start. You scramble out of bed, grab a stick of incense, and light it in the family hearth. You whisper an apology. The flames flicker. No one else wakes, but the coals crackle like they're listening. The next morning, the grandmother hands you a bowl of stew and says, "You look like someone who saw a tale." You don't reply. You just eat, and maybe glance out the window just to be sure. You wake slowly, blinking against the grey light of a foggy dawn. Everything is still. Even the chickens seem hesitant to announce themselves. The mat beneath you creaks when you shift. Your legs ache, not in protest anymore, but like old friends, reminding you they're still around. You sit up, stretch your arms, and wince as your shoulders pop like overripe maize kernels. The house is quiet, except for the soft, rhythmic grind of the metate. Of course, the matron is already preparing breakfast. You hear the gentle hiss of water heating over the clay stove, the whisper of corn dough being patted into shape. You follow the scent, barefoot and creaky, and greet her with a sleepy nod. She smiles and hands you a steaming tortilla. No words, just sustenance. Then comes a soft knock at the reed door. Your guide pokes his head in. "Today," he says with a strange glint in his eyes, "you marry." You nearly drop your tortilla. "I what?" "Symbolically," he adds, as if that's the part that needed clarification. You are too tired for riddles. You squint at him. "It's a mock ceremony," he explains. "Everyone your age does it eventually. Practice for the real thing. Chores, rituals, awkward eye contact. A lesson. A lesson in Aztec matrimony. Wonderful." You're handed a white cloak and a ceremonial sash, then marched across the neighborhood toward the home of another family. You're met at the entrance by a small group of elders, all with looks of deep amusement on their faces. One whispers, "This one looks nervous," to which another replies, "That's good. Shows awareness." Inside the home, a young woman your age sits across from you. You both exchange the kind of nod that says, "I too am being emotionally ambushed." Her name is Izel. She is quiet, polite, and seems deeply resigned to this. A priest arrives and begins the ritual with a short chant, followed by sprinkling both of you with flower water. He wraps the ends of your cloaks together and then places your hands on a stone bowl of maize dough. "You now share Tamil," he says. "This is both a metaphor and an actual Tamil. You are now, apparently, spiritually bound to this stranger. Over, steamed corn and mutual discomfort. Then come the expectations. Immediately after the ritual, you are escorted back to your host home, together, where, in full view of an audience that includes multiple giggling children and one Xoloitz's Quintly with judgmental eyes, you and your ceremonial partner begin the chores of marriage. First up, hauling firewood. The bundle is huge. It's tied with agave rope that cuts into your palms. Izel lifts her half like she's done this 100 times. You do your best not to drop it. The two of you shuffle through the streets together, bumping elbows and apologizing every few steps. You pass a group of boys who immediately begin whispering things like, "They look like jaguars in a sack." Once the wood is stacked neatly by the hearth, you begin grinding maize, together, side by side. Your fingers cramp. The mat smells like smoke and wet stone. She hums a tune. You try to hum along. You're off key. She smirks. Next comes Tamil making. You're taught how to fold the leaf, spread the dough, and add the filling. Your first attempt looks like a sad, confused envelope. Hers is a neat triangle. You laugh. She laughs. You both try again. Progress. The final test? Hosting. The extended family gathers. The elders, the children, the neighbors. Even your guide, now wearing a smug expression and an unearned feather in his hair. You and Easel must serve them the food you helped prepare, pour the cacao drink, keep the fire stoked and, above all, not complain. It's the quietest stress test you've ever endured. But somehow, it works. You spill only one bowl. She catches it. You both apologize in unison. It becomes a moment. The crowd seems pleased. After the last cup is cleared and the guests start to wander off, Eisel finally turns to you and says, "You'd be a terrible husband." You snort. "I know." Then she adds, "But you learn quickly," which, coming from someone who watched you nearly ruin a tamal, feels like praise. The priest returns to untie the ceremonial cloak knot. The marriage is dissolved. The lesson ends. But not before one of the old women pats your head and says, "You'll get there." You're not sure if she means marriage, cooking, or general survival. Later that afternoon, you sit with your guide under a tree, chewing roasted squash. "Seeds, you look terrified," he says. "I was." "Good. That means you understood it." You watch the city breathe around you. Children playing, elders sweeping, smoke rising. Someone argues with a duck. "You really believe in all of this, don't you?" you ask. He shrugs. "It believes. In me." And with that, he tosses a seed to the ground. A small gesture. But in this world, even that might matter. The sun begins to lean low in the sky again. Thick, golden light turning rooftops to bronze and canal water into moving mirrors. You're sitting on a stone bench beside a shrine shaped like a coiled snake. Your ceremonial sash now folded and tucked inside your reed bag like a strange sentimental souvenir. The fake marriage is over. The tamal was real. The sweat, absolutely real. But there's something about it all that doesn't feel like play. Everything is symbolic, your guide says, stretching beside you. Even the stuff that isn't. You nod slowly, realizing the symbolism is less like a hidden message and more like an extra layer of reality. The Aztec world doesn't separate sacred from practical. It stacks them like tortillas. Chores are rituals. Dreams are history. A duck can be a spirit messenger, or just really aggressive, depending on the day. Your guide leans in. "There's one more thing we haven't done." You brace yourself. "Dream sharing," he says. "In public." You blink. "Didn't I already do that?" He grins. "Yes, in a household, not in the plaza." You're taken to a small stone amphitheatre near the central market, just as twilight rolls over the city. A fire pit burns low in the centre, and around it sit maybe 24 people. Men, women, elders, children, each with a small clay token in their lap. These are dreamers, and tonight is a public Tenochtitlan, or dream flower circle. You're given a token too, yours shaped like a maize kernel with a tiny carved face. It's smooth in your hand, warm from someone else's palm. One by one, the circle shares dreams. Not just the strange and wild ones, although there's a fair share of those involving flying jaguars and dancing skulls, but also the quiet ones. A woman speaks of her dead father, waving to her from a hill. A boy describes a tunnel filled with bees who hummed the names of stars. An old man confesses he dreams only in silence now and wonders what it means. Then it's your turn. You hesitate. Then you speak. You tell them about the canoe made of flowers, the feathered shadows, the dog who always finds you and always knows the way. You mention the scroll in the jaguar's paws, the one you never got to read, and you finish with the strange feeling that the dream hasn't ended yet. There's a long silence. Then one elder nods and says, "You're not done dreaming. That's why the scroll was closed." Another murmurs, "Zolotl's still guiding." You don't look for the answer. Look for the road. Someone else says, "Maybe the scroll is you." You're not sure whether to be comforted or deeply confused, but it feels right. After the dream circle, Everyone stands and offers their tokens into the fire, one by one, like petals. Yours too. It blackens, cracks, and crumbles, leaving only the faintest whisper of maize-scented smoke. You walk back through a city made of orange light and shadows. Night vendors still sell tamales and carved whistles. Musicians play low melodies in the alleys. The water laps against the causeways like it's singing lullabies to the stones. Back at your host family's house, you find the grandmother waiting. She smiles. You spoke well. You thank her. Then she hands you a small bowl. Inside, cacao mixed with chili, honey, and a dusting of crushed flower petals. Drink before you sleep, she says. This one is for remembering. You lie down on your mat. The room smells of smoke, earth, and tired dreams. The Xoloitzcuintli curls up by your feet, sighing like a creature who's seen too much and still hopes for more. Your eyes drift shut, and the dream comes fast. You're on a mountain path. Ahead of you, the jaguar waits, scrolls still in paw. This time, he looks up, smiles, and holds it out. You reach for it and wake up. The morning light is soft and grey. You sit up, blinking. For a moment, you feel like something's changed, but you can't quite name it. The mat is the same. The room is the same. But maybe not. You go outside, and there, hanging on the wall beside the hearth, is a painted scroll. You've never seen it before. The jaguar is on it. So are you. You stare, and somewhere, deep in your chest, something unfolds. You stand there for a long time, staring at the scroll. It's rough, painted on bark paper with mineral dyes, the colours earthy and bold, burnt red, stone grey, jaguar gold. At the centre, the jaguar reclines, one paw draped over a scroll with spirals spilling from its sides like waves. In the background, maize stalks twist into the shape of hills. Clouds shaped like feathered eyes loom above. And there, tucked subtly along the edge, is a tiny canoe made of flowers, gliding along, a painted canal. There's also a figure beside the jaguar, slightly awkward posture, cloaked in white, holding a bundle of firewood. You squint. You don't want to assume. But yes, it's clearly you. You reach out. Stop yourself. Better not to touch it. Not here, not yet. Behind you, the grandmother approaches quietly. It came to me in sleep, she says. I woke before dawn, had to paint it before it faded. You ask, does that mean I'm meant to stay? She chuckles, soft and dry. No, you are like rain. You visit, you bless, you leave, you nod. It makes sense. Kind of. Later that morning, the family prepares for a send-off. No one says it aloud, but there's a rhythm to it, a quiet acknowledgement that your time in this world, however strange and vivid, has run its course. You help. Grind maize one more time. You fold tamales more neatly now. You even tie the reed bundles tighter than before. It all feels familiar, almost routine. The children tease you less now. The Xoloitzcuintli follows you everywhere. The matron gives you a cloak she's sewn. Herself, the pattern simple, a cornstalk, a jaguar paw, and a spiral. You ask your guide what it means. He shrugs. The corn you grew, the strength you found, the path you're still walking. Around midday, you make your way to the causeway, where a canoe waits. A priest blesses your departure with incense and a whispered chant. You're given a small pouch. Inside, amaranth seeds, a pinch of salt, and a carved token shaped like a dog. Your guide steps forward. You won't remember everything, he says, but your bones will. You smile, trying not to get emotional in front of a canoe full of strangers. He adds, tell your people what you saw, even if they laugh. The wind picks up. You step into the canoe. The paddler doesn't speak. He simply rows, smooth strokes that barely ripple the water. The city begins to fade behind you, temples and rooftops shimmering in the haze. The smells of incense, tamales, and dust fade into wind and silence. As the boat drifts across the wide lake, you close your eyes. You remember the first awful morning, the cold floor, the drum, the sore feet. You remember the spear that landed nowhere, the frog-shaped god you accidentally disrespected, the tamal you folded wrong, the jaguar who waited for your dreams to catch up, the child who out-philosophized you. You remember laughing and sweating and hoping your maize offering didn't offend a sky deity with questionable patience. You remember being scared. You remember staying anyway. You open your eyes and the city is gone, replaced by the still, grey water and a soft breeze. The world begins to slow. You lean back. The boat drifts. You breathe. Deeply. The sky blurs. The air thickens and your limbs go heavy and heavier. And then you are floating now. Not in the canoe, not on the lake, just gently adrift. The weight of the day easing from your body like mist rising off warm stone. The rhythm of the oars fades, replaced by the steady hush of breath. Yours, the world's. There's no need to. Move. Nothing left to prove. The muscles that once ached with strange new chores are calm. The thoughts that once scrambled to understand sacred frogs and dream scrolls have gone quiet. You feel your chest rise, full. The fabric of your borrowed cloak settles softly around you, warm as dusk. Above, the stars begin to gather, slowly, patiently, like a memory finding its shape. They don't rush, neither should you. You picture the scroll, still unrolling, still being written. Maybe you'll see the jaguar again, maybe not. But you know the path is there, winding between maize fields and smoky shrines, under canals and across temple steps. It's there. You are still on it, and that's enough. So breathe once more. A little slower now, a little deeper. Let the drums fade. Let the frogs sleep. Let the gods nod their silent approval from behind the clouds. And you, just rest. You've made it through. The day, even if you wouldn't survive a second one,